Hi, everyone. Welcome to the very first Leanpub author webinar. We're really excited to be doing this. As I was saying in the sort of little bit of housekeeping at the beginning, this is my very first webinar. And in the spirit of Leanpub, we're sort of, doing what we sort of encourage other people to do, which is try new things. And don't be afraid to do things for the first time and things like that. And be aware that there's going to be a little, rough edges and things like that, but you get better at things over time, including marketing books, which is what this session is all about. So I've shared a link in the chat to an article that is going to be the basis for this webinar. I'm just going to share my screen right now. This is the article here. Some of you may have found this, and this is how you signed up. But you can see that we've got all the topics laid out on the right there. These are all links and stuff like that to the article. And they're all links. There are all kinds of helpful links in this article as well that you can use, so you can go to later. So you don't need to be able to sort of memorize everything that I'm going to be doing here in the webinar today. So just to sort of go over what we're going to be doing, I'm going to show you how to create a book and talk a little bit about Leanpub's writing modes. I'm going to talk a little bit about a very interesting thing, which is marketing a book before you publish it. I'm then going to talk about, sort of Leanpub's kind of main mission, which is lean publishing, publishing a book in progress. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about setting the price for your book, which is, just an interesting topic in itself, pricing products and things like that. But in particular, books and in-progress books and self-published books and things like that all have their own interesting challenges and opportunities, of course, as well. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about creating coupon sales, which is a really cool Leanpub feature. I'm going to talk about another really cool Leanpub feature, which is creating packages. I'm going to talk a very little bit about how to post about your book on social media and things like that. And then I'm going to talk about what you can do when your book is 100% complete. And then just at the end, prompt you to sign up for our author newsletter if you haven't done so already. So let's just get going here. And if you've got the link, I would suggest you might want to open it up and scroll down, because what I'm going to be doing is going through it. So the very first thing to do to get going in your Leanpub journey is to create a Leanpub book. With the way to do that is in the link in the article, or you can go to what I like to call the escape hatch here in Leanpub at the top right on leanpub.com and click the create a book button or link. I'm just going to call this, demo book author. Webinar. When you click the tab button, Leanpub will helpfully give you a URL, but you can modify that and you can change it later. And I said I'd be talking about our writing modes. So we've got basically 3 writing modes. The first is writing in your web browser, which is what we're going to be doing today, just very briefly. The second one is writing in the cloud, which is using GitHub or Markdown or Dropbox to write your book. And then the third mode is the upload writing mode, which is for people who have their own way of making books and just want to upload their book. This is particularly useful for people, anyone watching who's already got their book published, say on Amazon KDP or something like that. If you already have an EPUB and or a PDF format, you can really easily get up and going on Leanpub using the upload writing mode. And you don't need to learn Markdown and all those other things that I'm going to explain in a bit. I'm signed into my own account here for the purposes of this demo. If you're brand new to Leanpub, this will actually be, when you set it to the browser mode, you'll actually be set automatically to a free plan, because it's free to write in the browser mode or the upload writing mode. We do recommend that you explore some of the different options and things like that are available for the different types of memberships. And we do definitely recommend that you check out the lifetime membership that you might have seen there. So that's how easy it is to create a book on Leanpub. I'm just going to click add to plan. Because I've made many, many Leanpub books, this might take a little bit longer than it will for you. But you can see the progress bar is going, and we'll be on our way shortly. While that's loading, one thing you can find in our help center, which is at help.leanpub.com, is a bunch of really helpful articles. We've got a few hundred, I think close to 1,000 now, including this brief tour of Leanpub So if you just put brief tour or something like that in the search bar, you'll find it. You'll see that there's a link to a video there where I explain this. We made this article a little while ago when we did a big redesign. And sort of occasionally people do kind of get lost in Leanpub. One of the reasons for that is that we're catering to more than one audience. We're basically catering to both readers and authors. So there's kind of two dimensions to Leanpub. Amazon has a similar thing going on there sometimes. This is taking a little while longer to create the book. So I'm just going to go to a book that I already have. So here are my Leanpub books. Some of the ones that I've got published already. When you create a Leanpub book, you will typically be going to the Write tab or the Overview tab and things like that. It'll be a lot smoother than it is right now. But in any case, why don't we move on? Yeah, so this is what the overview page for a Leanpub book looks like. This is a book in the cloud writing mode. And you'll see that there's like, all kinds of really cool features and stuff like that there. The most important ones for you as an author when you get started on Leanpub are previewing and publishing. So when you go to the preview page, you'll be able to sort of preview a sort of private version of your book for you to look at and correct and things like that. And then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to eventually publish your book. The first thing that happens, though, when you create a book on Leanpub is that we actually create a landing page for your book that has a form on it that people can fill out so that they can get notified when your book is published. And this is one of the really key things that I wanted to talk about today, which is marketing your book before you publish it. Now, whenever people are writing books, they talk about them all the time and things like that. So that's just sort of natural enough. But with Leanpub, you actually can think of the sort of form as a way of getting people to kind of like sign up. It's almost like signing up for a newsletter or subscribing or something like that. That way that when the book is, you can sort of see like how much attention you're already getting. People can actually enter a form and say how much they would be willing to pay for your book and things like that. And so it's really good for giving you confidence that you're reaching people, that they're interested in your ideas and things like that. I've just got a message here from Peter that I'm going to look at. Oh, no, we're just going to move on, I think. And we've actually got a really long article here about how to market a book you haven't published yet. Part one, I tend to do this when I write articles myself. My sort of plan gets ahead of me, but this is a really good article for learning how to market your book that you haven't published yet. There's all kinds of things you can do. You can create a social media account for your book. You can start talking about it. If you have a website and things like that, if you have a blog, what you might want to do is start blogging the progress of your book and things like that. If you're working with co-authors, you'll also want to maybe work with them to sort of get the word out about things that you're doing. Again, with lean publishing, the idea is to sort of be open about your writing process as much as you can. And that leads us to the next part of the webinar where I wanted to talk about lean publishing or in-progress publishing. So there's a talk by Peter here that you can find in the article that's really good. That's from a few years ago. That goes into all of this in depth. But if you're unfamiliar with Leanpub and lean publishing, so here's the brief story. If you're writing a book about a changing technology, and you try to go through the normal publishing sort of company process, what you might do is you might have to get an agent, you might have to pitch it. Nowadays you actually have to write a business plan if you want to pitch a book to a publisher often, not always, but often. Then you're going to have to do a bunch of marketing on your own anyway, where you're going to go through a whole sort of book development process. And at the end of it, in the old days of print books, the print book would have to be printed. It would have to be shipped to stores and things like that. And one thing that can happen if you're going through that process is that whatever you're writing about, like I said, if it's a changing technology, might have changed by the time the book is actually available to people, and your book might be obsolete. So one of the sort of origin stories that we tell about Leanpub is that my co-founder Peter published a book that was sort of more or less obsolete pretty quickly afterwards. And that led him to think about, setting up a platform where books could be sort of updated relatively quickly. And then that led to the idea of actually publishing a book as you go along chapter by chapter. Now, for anyone watching who's familiar with the history of literature, they might know about something called serial publishing in fiction. So Lean publishing is a little bit different than that. The sort of cool story about serial fiction publishing is that if you've ever wondered why those like 19th century novels by Charles Dickens were so big, it was because they were actually being published, weekly or monthly in magazines, chapter by chapter. And let's just say that if your sales were going up because people were really interested in your story, your outline might expand. You might be planning more chapters than you were previously. And by the time the sort of run ends, you've got a really big book ready to go. Lean publishing is a little bit different because we encourage people to actually, make edits and changes along the way to what they've already published that normally wouldn't happen so much with serial fiction. Just on that note, serial fiction publishing authors did respond to feedback from people. Like I said, popularity was one great signal that you would respond to by increasing your outline. But, people would watch, what's the public reaction to this? What decisions should I make next? And things like that. So feedback, actually, incorporating feedback was a part of serial fiction and presumably still is on other platforms and things like that. And while we do invite serial fiction on Leanpub, typically we are sort of more attractive to people writing nonfiction books, which they want to update and which they want to publish as they go. A key thing about this with respect to marketing is to understand that every time you publish a new chapter of your book, well, first of all, of course, all of your existing readers get the updates for free on Leanpub. But you can think of every chapter publication as a new little mini book launch. That way you can use it. You can sort of launch your book many different times. An important thing to understand there is that, everyone who learns about your book for the first time is learning about it for the first time. And don't think that everybody already knows about it or something like that. Don't be afraid to, promote your book more than once on the same channel and things like that. And yeah, when you publish a new chapter, you can publish a short video, maybe just a 1-minute video, put it up on YouTube, put it on any sort of social media platform that you use. And so there's a lot more to this idea. I highly recommend you watch the video and get to know this process. But this is the sort of key thing, is that you're marketing your book as you write it. That's a really important thing about Leanpub. Next, I want to talk a little bit about pricing. I mentioned on social media myself last night as I was preparing for this webinar that, pricing is something I could talk about for a long time. Pricing is a very interesting topic for all kinds of products, like I said earlier. And it's particularly interesting on Leanpub because we have something called a variable pricing model, where you can see both a suggested price and a minimum price that you set as the author. The reason this starts to, and I'll show you an example here on Leanpub. Let me just scroll down to one of our best-selling books right now, Platform Strategy by Gregor Hoppe. Gregor's book, you can see, has a suggested price of $26 and a minimum price of $16. I'm sure he's been changing those prices over time and things like that. That's definitely something that we recommend, that if you are publishing your book in progress, that you start with a lower price and raise it over time, and be clear that this is what you're planning to do. Because what you want to do there is you want to encourage people to buy your book early, so you're getting a deal, and you want to get their feedback, and you want to reward them for being an early adopter and supporter of what you're doing. Another really important feature of setting your price is that you actually are going to, and one of the things we're going to go into in a little bit more is creating coupon sales and stuff like that, and participating in Leanpub's various kinds of sales and things like that. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you set your price high enough that you can discount it, basically. Whether you ever want to do a sort of full 50% discount or something like that is up to you. We definitely recommend experimenting with prices and things like that. But the really important thing to understand about the suggested and minimum price model is that what you're doing is you're empowering your potential readers to choose how much they want to pay. So if they want to pay the suggested price, which is what the web page will be at when they go there, they can just pay that price. They can actually slide left to pay less all the way down to the minimum price that you've set, or they can slide right and they can pay more, which believe it or not, people actually do if they want to reward the author, if they or just sort of show support for the author and things like that. I've got a long explanation of a bunch of different things here in the article, which I recommend you read. One really important thing you can do on Leanpub is opt into our promotional sales, which I mentioned. And so we've got an article showing you how to do that. You do that from the pricing page for your book, which you can find on the page overview, on the book overview page. And there you'll see a bunch of options, how to set the minimum price, how to set the suggested price. And you'll also see an option to discount your book here. This page has gotten a little bit bigger over time. You'll notice since we made this article. But what you want to do is we highly recommend you put in a sort of maximum Leanpub discount that you'll offer there. And that will put your book in the sort of list of books that we can promote ourselves on social media with sales and things like that. We do various other things, of course, to promote books. We're sort of tweeting about them all the time, posting about them on Facebook, things like that. We've got YouTube shorts and things that we're doing now from our Front Matter podcast and things like that. But definitely you'll want to sign in for these Leanpub discounts, which is another great way we can help you market your book. You'll also find there that we've got a sort of, third-party kind of company program where we've got a partner in the UK called Leanpub that basically serves corporate clients with book buying budgets. That what can happen is their employees can use the service to get to sort of buy Leanpub books, and it's a really great way to reach new readers. Now I wanted to talk a little bit about coupon sales. This is a really cool feature. It's not unique to Leanpub, but we are pretty much more robust than most other platforms are at handling this kind of thing. So when you create a coupon for your book, you can create any number of coupons that you want. What you'll get is a link that you can provide to people, either on social media or an email and newsletters and things like that. And you can set the price to be basically whatever you want, free, anywhere down to $7.99, which is something we might talk about a little bit later on. But what you can do is really cool things, like you can actually set a maximum number of uses for the coupon, and you can set a start date and an end date, as well as the actual price that it's going to be. So this is a really cool feature. What it does is it lets you do things like I mentioned here, like, the first 100 people to click on this link will get 20% off my book, say. So if you set a maximum use of 100, you can do that. You can also say that, for the next 24 hours, if you set an end date a day from now, people can click this link to get a discount there. Again, there's a link that shows how to do this. Daniel Schweifler, a Leanpub author, actually made his own video, explainer video about explaining how to create and use coupons and things like that. It's relatively straightforward. As always, you start on your book overview page, go to the coupons page under pricing, create a new coupon, and then you'll see all these sort of various options. And one really actually interesting thing that I wanted to talk about for marketing your book is you can set these, we'll create a sort of automatic coupon link for you, but you can actually customize these. You can make it a person's name. You can make it about a conference, things like that. Which is really useful. And that's one thing I wanted to talk about when it comes to marketing your book. So a really important use you can make of these coupons is giving people free copies of your book. So you can give them a coupon link that has the price set to $0 so that the person can get your book for free. Not everyone you ask to review your book is probably going to say yes, but people, if you ask professionally and it's a customized email to them, people are typically actually very sort of flattered to be asked to do this. You can ask people to write testimonials. Definitely, I recommend, after my experience talking to authors about this over the years, don't be shy about that. Reach out to people who are influencers or sort of, prominent people and experts in your area. If you're writing a nonfiction book, or if you're writing a fiction book, people who are prominent in your genre, and just see if you can get a testimonial out of them. And see if you can get a review. And one really good way to do this is to get a free copy. I myself got a copy of a book pre-publication from a publicist at a big 5 publishing company, and it made me feel really good that I got asked to sort of review review this book myself. So I definitely recommend using coupons to give people free copies and things like that. Another important thing about coupons is that you can use them in various ways. There's a batch coupon feature that we'll link to in the article and things like that. So you can create huge batches of coupons. They can be used, for example, for distributing your book to a conference. So for example, if there's a conference, if you've written a nonfiction book and there's a conference going on about it, what you can do is you can contact the conference organizers and you can say, hey, I'd like to offer my book to all of your conference attendees at a discount. Here's a discount coupon link, stuff like that. You'll want to arrange with them before just providing them with the link. But that's actually a really useful way of trying to reach new readers. And even if the conference organizers don't include you in their swag or what have you, they know about you. And the people who are running a conference on your subject are good people to know about you and what you're writing about. Another really cool feature we have for marketing your book is packages. Packages are really interesting. What they allow you to do is to basically sell just your book if you want. But on Leanpub, you can also sell the book plus something else, any sort of digital file. So you can sell the book plus an audiobook file. You can sell the book plus lecture videos and things like that. You set this up on your book overview page. Or from your book overview page, here's an article about that. And it shows you an example, which I've also actually got the same example here in this article, which is one of our best-selling books by Roger Peng, Our Programming for Data Science. He set up these 3 packages, the book plus data sets plus R code files, and the book plus lecture videos, data sets, and R code files. This is really useful in lots of ways. You can see he's done some interesting things around pricing, where like the book itself has a minimum price of free and a suggested price of $20. And then the packages have different minimum prices and different suggested prices. If you've got digital content to go along with your book, this is a really great way to basically tier your sales. So you can reach people who are sort of interested in sort of, getting a bigger package. And you can, sort of more or less kind of upsell people in the best way possible, because you're actually offering them real value for what they're paying for. The next section here is how to post about your book on social media. I've got an article about that. This is a very complex topic, actually. Again, like I said at the beginning, the main thing is to just dive in and try things. And definitely the number one advice that people get about how to post and do things on social media is to first find people who are in your area, like your genre or your thing, the subject area that you write about if you're a nonfiction author, and find successful people and look at what they do. What do they post about? Are they watching the sort of trending issues and sort of hashtagging those words and things like that? Are they posting regularly every day at the same time? Things like that. Just find people who are successful in your area, like on social media in your area, and more or less kind of start by just doing what they do and seeing if it works. Another really important thing that people talk about in the self-publishing world about posting on social media and marketing more generally is that you want to make sure that you enjoy it. You're not going to enjoy everything. You're not going to enjoy every moment. But you don't want to be sort of doing things that you don't want to do. This will sap your motivation. This will just make you generally feel bad. It definitely won't get you excited to get out there marketing your book. So try a bunch of different things, but try and do things that you genuinely enjoy. Just moving on here, we've got this section near the bottom, what to do when your book is 100% complete. So it's sort of interesting that in a, webinar about book marketing, we only get to this point after we've already done a lot of marketing. That's sort of one of the keys to the Leanpub approach to things, is that if you're publishing your book in progress along the way, chapter by chapter, there's all kinds of marketing opportunities that you've had that you'll have already learned. So maybe making coupons, maybe making packages, things like that. And so that when you get to the point where your book is 100% complete, if it's your first book, you'll actually already be pretty good at marketing, or at least you'll know your way around some of the things you can do. And at this point, when your book is 100% complete, There will be like lots of things you can find out there about, how to market a book and things like that will apply at this point. One of the things that people talk about in the world of self-publishing is the big decision that you're going to want to make when your book is 100% complete on Leanpub. And that's whether or not you should do what's called going wide. And that means basically publishing on as many platforms, self-publishing platforms as you're up for publishing on. I personally typically recommend that when someone's book is 100% complete, that they try publishing on other platforms. What we do find, and of course it's going to be sound self-interested, but a lot of people, try other platforms and realize that they're harder to use than Leanpub, things like that. And so they might find that these other platforms have restrictions that they don't like, things like that. And they do end up sort of, sometimes just sort of restricting themselves to Leanpub. But I definitely recommend that you try different platforms. With the caveat that I mentioned here, that if you're personally directing people to buy your book, like say you're standing in front of a conference or something like that, or you're just interacting with somebody on social media, what you definitely want to do is, almost certainly definitely want to do is direct them to Leanpub to buy your book. And there's two reasons for that. The first is that you'll probably be earning more money from your sales on Leanpub because we pay an 80% royalty rate. And the second reason is that your book is probably, if you've written your book on Leanpub and then you've gone wide, there's sort of more or less that Leanpub will remain the source of truth for your book. And it'll probably be the easiest one to update and things like that. So there actually are Leanpub authors who sell their books on other platforms who actually then give readers free coupons so they can get the book on Leanpub anyway, because they find that that's actually the best way to sort of keep the readers updated. And, I'm sure anyone watching or listening who's, written a book knows that it's you can mark your book 100% complete. You can be like, I'm done. And then you realize that you're going to come back and you're going to want to add another chapter, or you're going to want to fix some things and stuff like that. And so having Leanpub as the source of truth, even if you're going on to other platforms, is really important. One thing you can do then is we have an unbranded ebook export feature that I'm sure some of the participants in the webinar are familiar with. So what that means is that you can basically export a version of your book that doesn't have the Leanpub logo in it or anything like that, so that you can just sort of, put it up on other websites without any connection to Leanpub if that's what you want to do. Getting your book into print is something you can do once your book is 100% complete. We have a really handy print-ready PDF export feature that you can use if you've written your book in one of our writing modes. If you're using our upload writing mode, you can't use that unless you get your book converted into Markuo, which is our version of Markdown. But in any case, it's actually pretty easy to sort of, you just set some settings and we give you your PDF and off you go onto another platform. We also relatively recently launched something called our Publish on Amazon service. So this is for people who want to write but don't want to learn self-publishing platforms. Particularly Amazon can actually be quite complicated to use. People do complain about it. And so basically we had authors who for years have been asking us, can you just give me, I know I could do it myself, but I'd rather pay you. Can you just handle all this Publish on Amazon stuff for me and get my book in print? So we have this Publish on Amazon service, which is really useful. And I definitely recommend you click the link in the article and check it out if that's the kind of thing that you're up for. We also have, when your book is 100% complete, we also have this service called Translate AI, which is kind of incredible. It works. We can translate your book into, I think it's 31 different languages, which is really interesting. You might want to try one new language first and see how that works for you. But basically, it's a really excellent service that lets you reach new readers in new languages, basically with the click of a button. It does cost some money, and we'll explain all that to you and things like that when you go to buy it. But if you've got a completed book on Leanpub, I definitely recommend you check out our Translate AI service. It's incredibly powerful. We also have something called Course AI, which lets you turn, if you've written a nonfiction book, it lets you turn it into a course, a multiple choice course that people can take online. I mentioned sort of corporate buyers of books and things like that. Often sort of corporate buyers might totally encourage their employees to take online courses, but they don't necessarily want them, sitting with their chin on their hand reading a book. So turning your nonfiction book into a course is a really excellent, an online course on Leanpub is a really excellent way to reach a new kind of reader. And it's just sort of more sort of like hooks out there for people to get to find about your content, find out about your content. And even if someone isn't interested in a course that they find, they might find your book through that and find out about you. And the last thing I would recommend, just before we go to a Q&A session, is that you sign up for our Leanpub Author Update newsletter. I'm sure most of you actually probably found out about this webinar through the author newsletter, but that's definitely what I would recommend. All right, so that's been a lot of me talking. I am going to stop sharing now. And I'm going to just go to check the Q&A here. One thing, someone reached out to me before the webinar and asked me about different genres. What are the best ways to sort of publish fiction, nonfiction, technical books, and things like that? And I would definitely say that the actual tool that you use, I mean, Leanpub is going to be the best way to write a programming book, that's for sure, because you'll be writing in plain text. You can sort of add, we have features for adding code samples and things like that. But the tool that you use won't really matter all that much for the genre that you're writing in the end. But what will really matter is pricing. So a typical, when people sort of get into self-publishing, usually what they're going to be reading about or finding out about is publishing fiction, because that's where most people's heads go when they think about writing. And that's where most people's heads go when they think about self-publishing. So what that means is that the pricing advice that people are typically exposed to is fiction pricing advice. I could talk about this subject for a very long time, particularly in the context of ebooks and things like that. Although the sort of controversies have kind of settled at this point. But the short version is that you want to publish a nonfiction book at a higher price point than you want to publish fiction. That's largely just because of people's well, there's two main reasons for that. One is people's expectations. People just expect fiction to be cheaper. But also, if you're writing a nonfiction book, particularly the sort of typical kind of Leanpub book, you're writing for professionals, people who are looking to advance their careers, things like that. And they've got budgets and they want to spend money. And to some extent as well, you get the kind of, effect that, the more expensive a bottle of wine is, the better it tastes to you. There's something like that going on that I'm sure anyone listening who's been, out there publishing stuff is aware of, that, there's a little bit of a dance. You don't want to make things too expensive, but you also don't want to look cheap. And so the typical advice that we give is that you price your book higher than you normally would. Oh, and yeah, Peter's just saying in the Q&A that for fiction, the most important store is obviously Amazon. So you can actually use Leanpub to produce your book, and then you can actually take the ebook files and you can put them on Amazon. And you can take the print ready PDF and put it on Amazon. You could actually, that's a totally legitimate use of Leanpub, is to just use it to make your files and then go elsewhere to do all of your selling. All right. Well, if we don't have any more questions, I think I'm just going to end this first author webinar for Leanpub. Thank you to everyone for attending. Again, you can reach out to me at len@leanpub.com. We'll be putting this up, some version of this up on YouTube with links and helpful links and things like that. And of course, you can go to our help center and you can find the article as well. So thank you very much, everybody. I hope you had a good time.